Jette and Bjorn, your collaboration is quite new. Would you maybe start to explain a little of how your partnership came about?
Yeah, well, nearly 2 years ago we met at an event in Aarhus called Sculpture by the Sea.
We had a lot of common ideas about that show and other shows and where we were.
Yeah. You know, it became a consequence, and it also became a consequence of how we are working the concept of our engagement in a way, situated on each side of the world.
But it also led to, you know, not so much arguments, but, you know, discussions, because the aesthetics or the cultural difference was it certainly exists, and that was very interesting. I think, and it continues to be part of what we are doing, which is what you were saying about context.
Yeah. So we are now making this to our project, the context, and what we're doing is always about context in a way. So that was the starting point, and that was how we met, and that is how we are going on still. There's a lot of opposite issues, diversity in the project. When it's daytime in Denmark, it's nighttime in Australia, and when it's summer here, it's winter there, and winter, well, it's colder there, and so on. And there's a gender opposite. How to say, diversity too. So there's a lot of diversity into the project.
Implicit in the partnership, there's that the artworks are always coming with the result of two different perspectives into each artwork.
You can say that.
Yeah, I would say that, because we've had a lot of discussions on this current piece that we have, and it means something totally different to me than it does to Jette.
Yeah.
And sometimes Jette will discuss a certain aspect of it that makes no sense to me. And it's part of this context and almost cultural background that sort of informs that discussion. And what with this particular piece, because it's very ordinary Australian sand, that is something quite extraordinary here, and we're hoping that changing that context from Australia to here will give it something that makes it special.
To concentrate on this piece that you're making here, which is 23 tons of Australian sand, what are the different readings you can see? Because we have discussed the piece here in the Frie Udstillingsbygning as well, and of course there's many perspectives. There's the land art tradition that you can see. You're taking soil into the institution, which is something we have seen in art history, of course, in the 60s. Then we have the whole climate aspect of it, which I hope you will also open up and discuss. And when you, Bjorn, says that we talk about the piece completely differently, would you maybe elaborate a little on the different readings?
It's probably more the political aspects that land art encompassed, and I think in a way this is certainly a political piece, whether it's through the climate change debate or whether it's through even land, you know, who owns land, or whether you're talking about immigration and refugees. It has that sort of aspect about it, because I think we've talked about this too. To me, the important part of this project was the journey and the narrative that journey has created, and it's created a lot of discussion amongst friends and others who have known about it. So to me, it's this journey, and Australia is all about journeys, because it's a country of immigrants, and there's this saying in Australia where we talk about the tyranny of distance, because everything is so far away. And this journey took 59 days, and it went by 2 ships, 3 trucks, and now it's going to be shoveled. So it's had quite an extensive journey, and we've mapped that journey, and we hope to possibly take it on elsewhere as well, on a continuing journey.
How do you defend making this sand have this travel in a climate discussion as well, where we have a lot of CO2, of course, being burned to bring it here?
Yeah, well, we've mapped the CO2 and it's 5 tonnes so far. But it's the way it's been travelling is quite efficient because the airfare for me to come over and go home is actually 8 tonne. So it's all relative. And we're not placing a large emphasis on the CO2, but yes, it is possibly provocative that way. And surely that's the role of contemporary art, is to provoke a discussion. Whether it's correct or not, I don't know.
So if we look at your other piece, striking back on nature, we have the element of the nature, of course, again, but there you're sort of prevailing nature to function somehow in the way that it usually functions. Is that to explore the limitations, or is it to try and make us reflect on the limitations that we are pressing on nature daily?
Well, striking back on nature is actually our first piece together, and it was just in this dialogue we both were provoked by the talk about climate change. It's been spoken about as a big human crisis that is unavoidable. You cannot slip it in any way, and we're going to facing the tipping point very soon, and so on. And it is like a catastrophe, a human catastrophe that we do not know anything. We don't know the result of. And this collective hysteria, we believe it is provoking us. At the same time, we actually believe in it. So it's just a dilemma we're placed in. And then we just needed actually to provoke nature in a way to see what would actually happen if you actually, stressed it in a way, stressed nature in a way. What would happen if we made a local climate change? And then last spring we wrapped an oak tree in the middle of Jutland in very tight
plastic and ropes
and fabrics and so on, and stripped it up, and then we just waited to see what would happen, and then it just grew through.
It fought back.
It just grew through faster. And well, from having normal oak leaves that would be at this side, it became oak leaves.
So you ended up with like mutations almost.
It mutated simply out of the situation.
It adapted and mutated and actually almost became stronger.
Yeah.
You know, one of the interesting things we've discovered through these various projects is that how a person's response to, say, climate change or acceptance of it is not so much fact-based, but culturally based. And they can have all the facts in the world and it can be, indisputable as to what is happening, but their decision-making is based on a cultural decision-making process. So once again, that's a sort of a context issue too. How you react to what's going on is basically dependent on who you are, where you are, and what's going on around you.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about this experiment in the piece which you have in here, time seems really to be an issue in the process of your partnership.
Things to grow take time. You can start a process this time we start a process and it will be finished in the 5 years' time. That gives sense in the collaboration.
But also in the tree sense, it was dependent on the seasons.
Yeah.
It wasn't dependent on next month, it was dependent on next spring. And but when you come back to the soil, or the sand rather, you talk about it being X amount of years old. That sand is, and I hope when it's in the actual gallery here, it sort of sits there and it has its own presence, like a sort of a silent witness to possibly what has gone on beforehand or what will go on. And it sort of sits there mutely and perhaps has a presence that communicates something beyond what it physically is in front of you.
you could say, and I always think that art pieces are part of a process. You are stretching the point of the closure of an art piece. Yeah.
Definitely stretching the point. And what we're doing every time we are exhibiting the sand is to weight it, to see if it's losing, how to say, weight, or if it's we're losing cubic meters of it. You know, it will disappear, and we'll just travel around with it for the next 5 years and put it into different shows, insides and outsides, and yes, it will disappear.
But just taking up your point a bit further, it's because, as you say, it's not a defined project where that's the end point, that's the exhibition. It's an ongoing experiment, and we really don't know what's going to happen next year with the oak tree, and we don't really know what's happening with the sand in many ways as to where it might go and what that journey will entail. I mean, it was quite a difficult process to get it here in the first place, you know, and although we haven't so much documented that, it is part of that journey, and I think that the next part will possibly be as complicated because it'll be going into a new context, and who knows? It might only be half of it, as you say.